Crap with Beth and Matt. Cut the Crap is the world's #1 no bullshit health and fitness podcast. Hello once again, friends and fellow no bullshitters. This week we are chatting with Jess Power, aka the Behavioral Nutritionist. We talk about our behavior surrounding food and how you can overcome emotional and stress eating, along with some practical tips and practices that you can start implementing right away. Let's jump into it. Hello,
Hi.
Jessica. Welcome to Cut the Crap with Beth and Matt.
Yes. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me on.
We're excited to have you.
And I don't know why I said Jessica. So Jess, this is Beth. Beth, this is Jess.
Hi,
I don't think I've
Jess.
been formally met, have you?
No, just through Instagram.
Yeah.
TikTok.
Usually Beth is the one doing intros because she's always bringing her friends and stuff on here. But here I am. I finally get to bring somebody on. So
Yeah, right?
Oh yeah, no, I'm really excited to be here. Funny you call me Jessica as well, Matt. I think that's the first time you've ever said that.
I know. I'm like, what the fuck am I thinking? I wasn't thinking. I've never called you
professional.
I saw your name pop up as Jessica, so fuck that. Yes.
I know. You're the second person today that's called me Jessica on calls. I'm like, oh, what's going on here today?
That's so funny.
So, so Beth and Jess. So, Jess works with me. She's essentially, so you have Hunter, Beth, on your team. Jess is essentially what Hunter is to you. So she's like our operating officer, second in command here. And she's also, you know what, Jess, let me let you talk about yourself.
I love that. I always find it interesting when someone asks me, what do you do? I'm the type of person that I do a lot of different things and wear a lot of different hats. I think I'm just wired that way. I get bored way too easily. But to kind of break it down, I'm a registered nutritionist. So having a degree in nutrition and also a master's in nutrition as well. So when it comes to the whole like nutrition sphere, that's my thing. And I feel really happy that I'm able to continue to work in and around that field. So what I do now is, as you mentioned, Matt, work with yourself with all the behind the scenes, a lot of the behind the scenes within FitFat, helping out the coaches, helping out the clients, but also run the body and mindset portion of the program too. So we're really delving into the underlying causes that people struggle with. So, someone might struggle with that black and white thinking. So we deep dive into that, or someone might struggle with the scale. So we deep dive into more of the mindset around that, for example. So I do that and other consulting, my other private one-on-one clients, and et cetera. But yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's fair. So you call yourself a behavioral nutritionist then too, which I don't know if there's anybody else that has coined that term. So what would you say behavioral nutrition is, and what do you do with that?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting journey. After completing nutrition, I really never fit into the nutrition world because I don't look like, quote unquote, what a nutritionist looks like. I don't act like a nutritionist acts like, or how I had perceived it. And I think one of the main things within nutrition degrees, dietitians, etc., you guys would probably resonate with this too, is it's heavily weaved in diet culture and disordered eating. So we more or less learn this studying or are really immersed into it. And so when I finished, a lot of the different avenues that were going to be what I will kind of work in, etc., I couldn't reach my integrity with it, working in like weight management places and things like that. And they just worked completely differently to the way I saw it. So really, I saw a gap in the market there where people weren't actually paying attention to the behaviors and habits surrounding food. And let's be real, diet and fitness and movement, they're easy. And most people know how to eat right. They know what's more helpful for their diet most of the time and what's less helpful for their diet, kind of seldom of the time, etc. They know how to move. They know all of these things, and yet they still come across these barriers, which is a lot to do with that mindset stuff. So your behavior around food? Where did that stem from? Maybe things that happened in childhood, or the relationships mirrored to you growing up. Maybe how you've coped with food in a way. I know the pandemic, for example, maybe people were on the cusp of having that disordered relationship with food, but that pandemic, that really acute stressed scenario, kind of just exacerbated it for a lot of people. So it's kind of underpicking a lot of that. So in essence, what a behavioral nutritionist is 80% mindset and 20% the easy stuff, the food and the movement, etc. Yeah.
Oh, totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. You gotta have the mindset part. Like anyone can be like, oh, here's your calories and your protein and eat your fiber. But you know what? Fucking yeah. Like when it comes to like stress eating, emotional eating, like, I mean, there's so much more involved in it that, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the key right there, the behavior part.
Exactly. And I think that, a lot of us are sold the idea. And, I definitely was deep in diet culture, as I mentioned, growing, kind of entering into the nutrition world. You're deep in diet culture world as well, a lot. And so, we're kind of sold these quick fixes and, quick solutions, but these quick solutions can't solve problems that people have had. Yes, we can go on a calorie deficit, extreme calorie deficit, eat 1,200 calories, lose a shit ton of weight, but then what? Right? Because you're just caught in this never ending cycle, which really frustrates me, because a lot of people and clients that I work with as well, they interpret this as, I can't do it. I'm a failure. Nothing works for me. I'm never going to be able to achieve it. And it's this kind of bias that people kind of consume themselves with, that also limits them from progressing because of that. And the fact that this has been such a generalized thing and widespread, with slimming world and all of these different things. A lot of people are like, well, that's what I thought you were supposed to do. I thought if I wanted to lose weight, I just have to starve myself and like, no.
There's a better way out there.
Yeah, for sure.
Balance is beautiful, right? We say that all the time.
Yeah.
But achieving that balance.
People have a hard time with balance.
Yeah. Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
So how do you have someone practice the art of balance?
Yeah,
like
so
being able to, have that cake and your veggies. And I get asked that a lot, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
So I think balance is boring, and many of us humans, we don't like to be bored. And we don't like, oftentimes we reside in this like all or nothing, like dichotomous thinking. And many of us, even if you think into like experiences growing up, maybe we grew up in a chaotic environment, so we're always kind of in and out of these kind of ways of being. So when we're stable or when things are balanced, it can be like there's a lull, or it's boring, or it's not working. And so I think the first step to creating that balance is understanding, okay, well, what's the struggle, first of all, because there might be many different struggles. But then also practicing challenging whatever those behaviors are. So if it's, eating really, really good during the week, and then Saturday is like, well, I'm off the hook because it's Saturday, how can you add more of Saturday into your week? So not having this black and white with good food, bad food, and creating more of that balance there. So for example, it could look like adding in some chocolate with your lunch. It's bizarre to think that you could do that, and even in a calorie deficit or not, but creating that really does help create that balance, because when we restrict in any way, shape, or form, be it mental restriction or physical restriction, what we're really doing is we're increasing the the response we get from that food, right? So the perceived reward that we get from that food. So the chocolate just goes from being, a great chocolate that you enjoy to the best damn chocolate you can ever have in the entire universe, because you can only have it on Saturdays. So then when you have it, you can't stop. And so, yeah, it takes really challenging those food rules and beliefs around food, and refuting them in times where you wouldn't necessarily do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So how do you challenge those food beliefs and food rules? I mean, you first of all, you have to even people don't even realize that they have food rules or these beliefs about food, right? That they're doing this black and white thinking and
Yeah.
telling them that they can't do these things. So how I guess awareness is key. So how do we start that awareness or raise that awareness?
Yeah, so I think the first key comes with more of those self-limiting beliefs, and that can usually kind of highlight and raise some things there. So you can identify any of those underpinning self-limiting beliefs by anything that you notice is preventing you from getting to A to B. So really tuning into that awareness and patterns. So maybe it's tuning into, okay, how do I react when I come home from work? What are my behaviors there? How do I react when I'm in work? What are my behaviors there? So really, how do I react as well when I'm around people? What are my behaviors there? So taking a look at your daily habits and practices and kind of doing a little bit of an audit on them, so to speak. So I use all the time with clients is a food and mood diary to really get a clear idea on, okay, what are those behaviors and habits first and foremost? And through that, you can see trends. Then when you look at those trends, it might be something like, okay, maybe I ate a big lunch, but I didn't get home until 8:00. But it's 8:00, so I haven't eaten in a long time. Maybe I've had an 8-hour window between meals, but because it's 8:00, I don't feel like I can eat now because it's too late. So that to something that limit whatever that is, that's a rule, right? So I after 8:00. Or maybe it's something like I should only have healthy foods in the house, or I can't have Doritos or whatever it might be. So the key element to that, to even identify what the beliefs are, is developing out that awareness. But I think most importantly, showing yourself a whole bucket load of compassion when you're doing it, because this is not beating yourself up or seeing all the things that are wrong with you. This is about the individual taking control of where they want to go and the life they want to live and the person they want to become more of. So yeah, I think that's kind of key as well to add in.
I love it.
Yeah,
so
I love it.
Obviously, with the behavioral side of things, and I think Beth might want to get your input on this one with, let me, before I get into this, you kind of have your own history with food and disordered eating, right? So how did you overcome that? And really, where did that start from? I mean, did it stem from your childhood and things like that? And how did you go about conquering that essentially?
Yes, I love this question so much because it's quite, well, let me rewind a little bit. So yeah, I struggle with my relationship with food since for so many years. I reached puberty quite young. I hit puberty at 10 years of age. So I ended up developing out quite young. So I went through this mad growth spurt, which kind of stopped probably by the age of 12 because I'm only 5'3". And so a point where I was the tallest in my class. I was the biggest in my class. I developed out just like a more kind of a woman's body, but super, super young. So straight away that kind of pushed me and ostracized me away from others that I was in school with. So it kind of developed out. But the most interesting thing about it is I honestly didn't think I was doing anything wrong or even had a difficult relationship with food or even understood that was a thing that people struggled with until I think it was maybe around 6 years ago or so now. I was in a car crash and luckily I was okay, everything was okay, but I ended up developing PTSD from that. And through that PTSD, I ended up with severe nightmares, flashbacks, just all the fun stuff associated with PTSD.
Yeah.
And so I ended up kind of using food, but unconsciously. This was all unconscious. Food was just what was there. I didn't even realize it was an unhelpful behavior. But then I went to therapy and then I started looking at my thoughts and how to overcome my PTSD symptoms. For example, there was a point where I couldn't cross the road without holding someone's hand. I would have a full-blown panic attack. There was a time where I couldn't be in a passenger seat of a car. I ended up getting my driver's license, had a car, but had to sell the car because I couldn't I just couldn't be in it. So it was very debilitating for me. So going through therapy and working with psychologists and doing CBT, basically, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, I realized for the first time ever that I have the power to change my thoughts. And that blew my fucking mind.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, through that, I was able to, tune into my thoughts, tune into, realize firstly that I had the power to change my thoughts, and all of that. And so it was really through the modality of overcoming my PTSD that afterwards I had that skill set and I felt unstoppable. I was like, okay, well, if I can do this, then that led me to create more awareness around other behaviors that I had. And then I realized, oh shit, I use food a lot to cope with emotions, not just a lot, for everything. And that I realized I had a binge eating disorder because, I couldn't stop. It was uncontrollable. And then it was like click, 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 click into place, any patterns and trends throughout for years and years and years. I realized this. And even tuning into thoughts of how I saw my body when I looked in the mirror. I thought that everybody hated themselves when they looked in the mirror. I didn't actually think that anybody liked what they saw, because it was just something that I never heard of from someone else saying it. It was kind of normalized growing up as well, that there was constantly something to fix and change and all of this kind of stuff. So yeah, in a roundabout way, that's more or less what led me to overcome that for myself. And so when I reached that point, I thought, well, you know what, if I can do that, and if I can have that kind of technique to overcome this, then everybody can, because it's not a secret. And that's one of the primary ethos that I have, is making this as accessible and practical for others to implement. I think a lot of the time in the diet and fitness industry, a lot of people think this is my secret sauce, this is my secret little thing, so to know about it, and all of this. Exactly, yeah. And open up this like gaping hole and give all of this awareness to people of you're this, you're that, all of that, and people are like, oh my God. But then they leave them and they don't give them any tools on how to actually overcome that. So it's bridging that gap and giving those specific tools to help overcome that. So yeah, that's a bit about my journey. I know it's probably a bit of a mouthful, but
that was good. It was good.
No, that was awesome. I'm sure a lot of people will be able to relate.
Definitely. I like what you said there about essentially the gatekeeping, that they'll make you aware of all these things, tell you how you have all these problems. And
right.
Then the solution, of course, you have to pay them a bunch of money to get their secret sauce, like you said, and that's something that Beth and I it's near and dear to our heart with our podcast and all the content we put out there. And even with our coaching businesses, is we want to make this shit for everybody. So knowledge and education should be available for everybody. And that should not be the limiting factor,
Yeah.
If you're paying us, it's going to be for just like that additional customization for yourself, the hands-on accountability and support and things like that. But the education, the knowledge, that should be available to everybody. Helping you implement it maybe is what you're paying for, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think I'm very much in that same mindset as well. And I often say that any of the tools and practices I use, and I can go into a couple of them in a few moments, but any of those that I use, that's the easy part. The hard part for all of this, or one of the hardest things, is the remembering. It's the remembering to do it. And it's also, it takes effort, and a lot more effort than people give themselves credit to constantly create these conscious patterns and changes. The majority of our habits, behaviors, doings, everything is based off our subconscious. So that's our autopilot. We don't even know about it, right? And so it's the conscious remembering that's the most difficult thing with any of the behavior change stuff.
It's like reprogramming your brain for something that you've been doing for years, literally over and over and over again, sometimes not even really thinking about it. It's just it's what you do.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, we're sold this idea of this is like really quick and easy. And I think as well, because of the diet industry constantly selling these quickest, fastest solutions, it plays on how our brain is wired. Our brain is constantly trying to find the quickest, fastest solutions. And so when we something like lose X amount of pounds in, this many days, that really feeds on that. And so when people start delving into the work that we all do here, I know we all work similar ethos as well with our clients, they're like, oh, geez, this is not working, or this is taking much more longer than I thought, or I'm plateauing, or any of these different
after 2 weeks.
Plateauing.
Yeah.
Hot topic.
I know, you're not. You just need to give it time. You need to give it time.
Yeah.
That's not sexy though, right? Like you said earlier with balance, that's boring.
Yeah, it's really boring. It's really boring, especially if you thrive off chaos, whether you like it or not. It can be really challenging to be in that kind of like lull or limbo land. It feels a bit like limbo land. So I think even having that awareness before you go into it of, okay, this is going to be boring. It's going to be long. It's going to take you to do a lot more work than you ever have before, but you'll never have to do this again. If you do, you'll never have to come back here and do this again.
Yep. That's one thing I tell prospective clients when we're on coaching consults. My job is to get you to a place where you never need another coach again. I'm like, because of that, we keep, we're always going through new clients, every 6 months, 7 months or so, because, for some people it takes longer, but we're setting you up for success. And then we're going to release you back into the wild, essentially, with this new skill set, an emotional toolbox, if you will, so that you can manage things like emotional and stress eating, right? Which is really big on with what you do, Jess.
Yeah, exactly. I always say that if you still need a coach after you work with me, I've not done my job effectively. And also that's essentially it, right? Because I think it takes a lot of work and self accountability, because it is work, right? It's tiring and it's exhausting of delving into these things and having these new pieces of awareness. And if you go from being in that autopilot to suddenly having that, it's like putting on a pair of glasses for the first time. That can be really overwhelming too, which is why at the start I said you need a whole wheelbarrow of compassion when you're going through this process, because it's not pretty at all.
Not at all.
Yeah. And you're not going to be perfect, right? I think a lot of people want to be perfect and get it all. It's like, no, and rebounding and relapsing is part of the process. It's not going to be like a straight line to your success.
Yeah, in fact, I think those like dips, and I kind of describe as a roller coaster, those setbacks or those rebounds or whatever you want to call falling off the wagon, any of these terms that people use, they're actually a good thing, because they're opportunity to test out your skills. If you started really well and you continued really well, you'd never have any opportunities there to test out any of the new skills that you've learned, right? So each like obstacle or challenge or rebound or whatever it might be is an opportunity for you to test out, okay, well, what happened there and what can I do differently next time? Or how can I work this differently now? Or how can I show myself a little bit more self-compassion to help me manage through that? And each time you do that, the frequency of those things happening becomes less intense when they do occur. So the drop is less. And less frequent as well. So I just often describe that in terms of overcoming, say, like binge eating or things like that, right? That the goal is not to stop binge eating because, or emotional eating, for example, because we emotionally eat. And if, as humans, we all do it. We eat for happiness, all of it. We eat to celebrate, we eat to connect. There's so many different reasons why. But for binge eating, for example, this is a coping mechanism that's been learned over so many years. And so thinking that you're just going to eradicate that. Yeah. But, thinking that you can just eradicate that completely is, it's really daunting for people. It's really, really daunting for people thinking that you're just going to get rid of it, because that's their main coping mechanism that they've done for so many years. But the goal here is not to remove food as a coping mechanism. It's more to have it as the only thing you use for your coping mechanism, like anything, like absolutely anything.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, on that note, Jess and Beth, you mentioned coping mechanisms and having different outlets other than just food to help you alleviate that stress or that emotion, whatever it is you're feeling in that moment. So, Beth, I want to let you take this one because I think you know where I'm going with this, with the sugar thing. Because I know you. I think you probably want to ask about this because this is something that you get a lot of heat for on TikTok. Every time you talk about sugar addiction,
and actually food addiction is another one that I'm seeing a lot. Like, I got into another side of TikTok that it's a whole new world, like the bariatric side, and there's a whole like community, and I've actually been learning a lot from them, but it's quite interesting. A lot of them identify as like food addicts, and as an recovering alcoholic, I find that very difficult to like comprehend, like, because what are you addicted to, a Twinkie? Or there's not like one specific, like we all have to eat to live, right? We need food. So like, can you maybe talk about that a little bit and what your thoughts are around those labels?
I love that you brought that up because I often find that these labels are debilitating and people make progress. Because if you label yourself as a chocoholic, if you label yourself as a food addict or a sugar addict, or any of these different things, first and foremost, it's very debilitating because it puts you in this I can't change because I've got an addiction. And so the language that we use around it is so important, probably the most important thing, because our thoughts, what we think, result to our behaviors, result to our actions, all of that kind of stuff. So it's all interlinked. But even getting back onto the topic of, food addiction versus, an alcohol addiction or a drug addiction, they are completely different things, completely different. And how our brain responds to them is also completely different. As you mentioned there, Beth, we need food to survive, right? We literally, if we did not eat, we would die. Full. And it causes harm to an effect, but the harm that others say addiction, well, you can say causes harm to effect versus other addictions, you can live without them. And in fact, it's best if you live without them, or not in a large quantity and things like that. And so they're completely different, and in fact you can't really compare the two because they're incomparable. It's more, I think what people are getting at is they are, the behavior. It's the behavior that feel uncontrollable around, right? So, if you have that addiction versus, that behavior, it's really that behavior that those people need to overcome, rather than an addiction. Because as I mentioned, you need food. And, things like sugar, you need sugar also to survive. Glucose is our most preferred energy source.
Right.
So you need it, right? And I think that those labels are very, very, very debilitating for people. And I think overcoming those labels first and foremost is that step to taking back that control. Definitely.
And I know that a lot of them actually, it's part of the restrict binge cycle, because a lot of them will actually cut out, say they have their trigger foods, right? Which, everyone has a trigger food, I suppose, that I overeat chips. So, there's that. But I still have chips in the house, but they will completely stay away from a said item, and then binge on it when, obviously the restrict binge, and then call that that was my addiction food. Like, I'm a food addict, I can't have that. It's like, okay, well, that's what you're telling yourself. You don't have that healthy relationship with food.
Yeah, exactly. And, that comes back to how we are wired. And, in our brain, it works off of those reward systems. And the way food works is, this is why a lot of manufacturing companies are so rich, because the combinations of food have.
Yeah.
So say, for example, like a cheeseburger is going to be a lot more palatable than a piece of broccoli. And the reason why a cheeseburger is more palatable than a piece of broccoli is for a multitude of different factors. But one of the factors is the combination of the carbohydrates and the fats, mostly. And when I'm not going to go too much into the science right now, but when you eat them, part of your olfactory system, in your mouth, taste, all of that signals that reward center in the brain as well. So you get that perceived reward from that. You get that it reduces down your cortisol, your stress hormone, and increases those serotonin, those happy hormones as well, right? So that's one kind of aspect that happens. But another thing as well is predominantly, that's one small part of it. And I think that's where people are kind of getting at of, oh my God, I got my hit, that kind of analogy. But that's a small percent, because also we're complex beings. And so we can't just isolate one small little thing and say that's the claim. That's one small little thing. The main biggest thing is the association with that food, the behavior associated with that food. So for example, I'm sad, so I eat a cheeseburger. I'm happy, I eat a cheeseburger. I'm cheeseburger. And so over time, we use this cheeseburger analogy as this thing that gives us that happy release of those happy hormones, because it's used in that way to cope with an emotion. And this is often learned through things like, maybe growing up, your parents would bring you to McDonald's if you've had a bad day, or even a good day, even, if you got a good grade, right? That's still an emotion. It's still an emotion as well.
Yeah.
But by practicing that behavior over and over and over and over again, what you're doing is you're telling your brain that's the only way to cope with that emotion. That's the only solution here. And as I mentioned, we're constantly trying to find the quickest, fastest thing. So you're not going to sit there and think, I wonder what's going to work right now. I'm feeling quite sad, or I'm feeling quite stressed. So what am I going to do? When you're in that acute moment, you're not going to do that. You're going to straight away signal quickest, fastest thing, which is that cheeseburger, whatever it might be. And so it's more of the association and that learned behavior. It's that learned behavior rather than anything else, basically. That is the predominant thing here. And so in order to overcome that, it's really broadening that out and finding more ways to cope with that, as well as food. But getting back to your point as well there, Beth, of that restriction, when you restrict, you also increase that perceived reward value of that food. So you allow yourself that cheeseburger on a Saturday. And so when you have that cheeseburger on a Saturday, you're gonna have cheeseburger, you're gonna have fries, you're gonna have a milkshake, you're gonna have a dessert, you're gonna have all the things, because it's that window of opportunity to just get it all in, right? So it's a lot more. And I think this is also, unpopular opinion, people not wanting to take accountability and realize that they have a lot more power and control than they think they do. And that was a tough pill for me to swallow, for sure. But once you wake up to that and you realize, hang on a second, I'm tired of my own bullshit. What am I doing here? Change that.
I mean, that's what happened to me with liquor. I was like, all right, nothing's changing if I don't do anything about this. It's a tough pill to fucking swallow, to actually admit to being weak at something, or, something is its power over you, and getting help.
Yeah, exactly. But I think, what's the risk reward of that, right? Do you just keep in your comfort zone and keep plodding along until what? What's like, and I think for many people, I think this is where social media is such a good thing, actually. Is it helps give people that awareness much more quickly than I would have had it. I had to bloody work for my awareness. Really bloody hard. And I think now it's so readily available, and there's so many really, really great people out there, like especially even you guys promoting all these messages on social media and TikTok, that it's giving people those little kind of knowledge bombs and giving them, that ability to do the deeper inquiry of, okay, I didn't realize that was a thing, but now I know it's a thing, so maybe I should do something about that thing.
Yeah, and everybody's I mean, not everybody's always going to come to that conclusion, but at some point, most people will get tired of their own shit, right?
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say that. Maybe they're in their 40s, maybe they're in their 50s, maybe they're even in their 20s. I know a lot of people these days, which is amazing. They're coming to us and saying, I grew up this way. I'm still thinking this way, but I want to start a family and I do not want to pass this on to my own children.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And I think, that's the power of social media as well, because it feels like there's more of that collective healing and collective overcoming these problems. So, there's a lot more people doing that versus when I was going through my journey, I literally thought I was the only person on the planet that had that problem. I didn't know anybody else. I didn't even know binge eating or, using food in that way was a bad thing at all. Like, as I said, I thought everybody didn't hated themselves and they looked in the mirror. I didn't realize I didn't realize any of that stuff. And, an analogy I always use is a fish can't see water. And, that you don't know what you don't know. And so that's so powerful, having access to so much now, for sure.
Yeah.
And we catch a lot of heat, don't we, Beth, for the messages, for everything that Jess was just talking about, for the how the buck stops with you and how you need, you've got to take that accountability yourself. I know yesterday I received a question on my Instagram story. They said, do you think that if somebody struggles with accountability, that reaching out to somebody for accountability can help? And I said, absolutely, it can help. But you still have to be the one showing up and allowing yourself to be held accountable, because then you're holding yourself accountable to it. You can avoid accountability all the time. People do it. People avoid accountability and at some point they'll be like, this is enough. I'm done lying to myself, essentially. But that's a reoccurring theme we have here, is just being honest with yourself. We probably say it in every fucking episode at this point. Holy shit.
I mean, I think it started with our first episode with Susan.
Yeah, Susan Niebergall. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to, you got to be accountable for your own shit, and no one's going to do it for you.
Yeah. I always say no one's gonna save you. You have to learn to save yourself. And I think that moment when you realize that, no one is gonna save me. As dark as it sounds, we enter this world and leave this world on our own. So at the end of the day, if you don't have your own back, I mean, why? Why don't you have your own back, right? So it's really building that up, and building up that self-respect, and kind of that, I think that accountability and self-discipline and all of that, a lot of the time it's easier to say, oh, it's this person's fault because they brought chips into the house and I couldn't control myself, and they know I can't control myself, or a very basic example, but there's loads, versus saying, actually, I have a problem here. I can't control myself around chips. That's a really difficult thing to admit for many people. I think a lot of people are getting better at it, but I think that kind of, in order to build up a healthy relationship with food, it's really building up a healthy relationship with yourself. And, how do you do that? It's by making these daily commitments to yourself. It's by, showing yourself respect. Any of the things that you would do in a relationship, right? Like those core things, you start doing them for yourself.
And on that note, I'm thinking of myself in this instance, and this goes back to when I was a teenager even. I remember my dad was always lecturing me whenever I'd get in trouble or fuck up or do something wrong. It was always somebody else's fault. It was never my fault. I placed the blame on everybody but myself. I was getting in trouble in school because this teacher was a dickhead or they were an asshole to me, right? So I lashed out at them instead. No, it was me. I was the asshole. I was the one lashing out. Of course, I didn't realize that then, but I learned that, in my early 20s, I finally learned to start taking accountability for myself. And now I kind of see it too in my own son. He's 12 years old. And one big thing we're trying to teach him is responsibility. And it's like for sports and all, he's always forgetting his sports gear, his baseball glove, cleats, helmet, whatever it is. And I'm like, this is me back when I was busy. Like damn it. I reap what I sow, because now I'm dealing with it. But yeah, it was always his mom took his helmet out of his bag or something. I'm like, okay, maybe she did, but it's still your responsibility to check before you get to the game, before you leave, to make sure that all your stuff is in your bag, right? So,
Yeah, for
kind of
sure.
side tangent there.
No, no, I think it's that cultivating that tough love with yourself, and that healthy discipline too, which is made all up of really those promises that you make and keep to yourself consistently. You know, because even, you know, by breaking those promises, that's going to be one of the best ways to tether your relationship with yourself. The same as any relationship. If you were going out with a partner and they kept promising you something, I promise I'll go for a walk with you this evening, I promise, and then they just never do, you'll get really pissed off with them real quick. And the same goes for yourself, right? If you're constantly saying, okay, I'll do this, I'll do this, I'll do this, and you never do, it creates more of that dissonance between you and yourself, because you're constantly going against what you want to do, what you feel you need to do, and breaching that self-integrity as well.
Yep. Real talk. You also, to kind of go back to something we talked about earlier with emotional and stress eating, this is something that probably a majority of our listeners have experienced, right? I mean, everybody does at one point or another. Just what are some ways that people can start to work on emotional eating, stress eating, food as an outlet, it's that type thing?
I love that. So I think the first key thing is to accept that in some instances, food is going to be the only thing to soothe your emotion. In some scenarios, it will be. Someone who has overcome binge eating disorder, in some circumstances, it is the only thing that's going to soothe, you know, in certain circumstances. But getting into, and I think that's the first level of acceptance, right? It's not removing it and disqualifying that as a tool, because that's going to make space for you to practice new coping mechanisms as well. So if we take a look at, well, first of all, you need to identify the vast amount of emotions and feelings that we have in the first place, because a lot of the time, you know, food is this one size fits all. I'm happy, eat. I'm sad, eat. I'm angry, eat. So first of all, getting used to identifying, what does frustration feel like for you? What does, you know, apathy feel like for you? That kind of just feeling of nothing. And what do, you know, all of these different emotions and feelings, you know, you could simply look up the feelings wheel on Google and it gives you a whole diagram there. Then it comes to my favorite part for people, which is the experimenting phase, and experimenting how to release stress / emotions in ways. So some of the practices and habits which I do, well, first of all, I suggest for people to start building up their emotional toolbox. So coming up with a list of 5 to 10 things that help them to de-stress, help them to relax, whatever it might be, and allocating at least 20 minutes every single day to practice one of those things. And these don't have to be major things. It could be breath work. It could be something I do when I'm feeling overwhelmed is I'll lie on my bed in silence for 20 minutes and I'm like, nothing's happening. I'm just lying there, right? I just need to do that. Or it could be ecstatic dance or a dance practice or some form of movement. I think that's probably one of the main biggest ones that has helped me, especially when it comes to emotions, because an emotion is basically energy in motion. So if you're finding that emotion is stuck, maybe you've had a stressful day in work, but you can't scream at your boss because you'll get fired. So you're going to stuff it in. It naturally happens. But when you go home, you might have space to scream. You know, I was speaking with a client yesterday and we were talking about this exact thing, and she runs her own daycare service. And, you know, we were talking about like the kids in the daycare service. They're very expressive with their emotions. If they're getting overwhelmed, frustrated, they'll scream. They'll let out that emotion, and they're very, very quick. Whereas for some reason, us adults aren't, it's not really recommended. Okay, of course, you can't be going around screaming all the time. But you can definitely do these outlets outside of, you know, scream into a pillow, you know, shaking out your hands and legs, doing like an ecstatic dance practice is so super, super powerful. Journaling, blah, 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 whatever it might be. But I think the point about it is getting being you know, experimentative with it and testing out things in what they work. So it comes with allocating time outside of those acute moments, so that you start teaching your brain that there are more ways to cope with emotions. There are more ways to release something, or, you know, that works as well, because in those acute moments, you maybe remember it. Again, getting back to the remembering is the most difficult part about this. You know, you may remember it or you may not, and that's okay, but it's those lessons to help you kind of remember it. Yeah, I think that answers it. If you yeah. It's very broad, for sure, and I think that's where the kind of can seem a little bit like, okay, but what can I do? What can I actually do? Stressed. And another really, really good technique is slowing down, and helping with the remembering is setting timers on your phone.
I was gonna say 20-minute timer or something.
Yeah, 20-minute timer. I use that. That's really good if you're not too sure if you're acting out of an emotional response towards food or not. You're kind of like unsure. Give yourself that 20-minute window. If afterwards you still want it, go for it. But usually it passes. So give yourself that for it to pass. Or setting reminders on your phone at typical stress-based times of the day. So maybe it's 9, 1, 3 o'clock for some reason is a very stressful time for majority of people. 5, whatever it might be. And in those moments, take a big inhale, and on the exhale, repeating the affirmation, I am safe. Because when we are stressed, when we're in that stress-based response, we're not feeling safe. So that affirmation is probably one of the most powerful and most useful ones that my own clients do regularly, is do that breathing and the I am safe affirmation. So there are a handful of tools, but, you know, I think finding what works for you or the individual is most important. So that's why I always say get experimented with it. Another thing I also mention or do as well is, you know, some emotions are quite difficult for people to express, such as sadness or crying. I know many people struggle to release that emotion. So something which I do, because I also struggle with that, is I'll put on a movie that I know will make me cry. I know it's going to help me release out that emotion. So I'll set some time. I'll sit there. I'm not like a blubbering mess, but I know it's going to help me release some of that emotion that I can feel down. So it's all these kind of little tools and techniques that can be used. So yeah, I'm sure you guys have some as well that you kind of recommend for clients too, but they're the primary ones that come to mind for managing emotional stress eating. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Myself, one new one that I've started working on, and this I got from Kieran actually. I do voice notes, voice journaling on my phone because I hate writing things down and just I don't like it. So I'm always on my phone. So I'm using that to be kind of help me as an outlet. So I downloaded a voice journaling app and I do that. And sometimes, yes, I'm not afraid to admit this, is I'll have a good cry afterwards too, or even cry while I'm doing it. And that has been kind of a game changer for me in managing my emotions because I've been, as you both know, I've had a lot of stress in my life these last few months. And that's been really great for me for managing that.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, it's and I think as well by practicing these things, you also find a bit more safety within those emotions, because sometimes emotions can feel kind of sometimes those emotions can feel kind of scary as well, especially like anger or sadness. Well, anger is deeply rooted by sadness. It's usually the underroot of anger. But yeah, I think it's finding those outlets and creating that safe space for yourself. But, you know, how you do that, we're talking about, you know, might seem a little bit complex for people listening. But really what it looks like is giving yourself 10, 15, 20 minutes each day to do something for you. Majority of people that I work with anyway that struggle with their relationship with food, they're the person. And what I mean by that is they're the person, if something's wrong, someone rings them, or someone rings them, or they're a parent, so they have their kid, maybe they are a spouse, so they have their wife or their, you know, husband or whatever it is. So they're constantly having people pulling and dragging at them, for want of a better expression, which means they're constantly coming from that place of feeling depleted. And so one way to kind of restore some of that emotional energy too is very quickly from getting it from food. So that kind of stress response to getting it from food. Whereas even just allocating 10 minutes each day to fill up their cup using one of the modalities or another modality that we were speaking about here, also helps them to fill up that energy store so that they're not constantly giving from that empty plate.
Yeah, you can't serve others if you're not serving yourself first. At the end of the day, you can't help others if you don't help yourself. You can for a short period of time, but you are going to crash and burn at some point.
Yeah, definitely. And as well, I'm sure you guys have probably heard this too from people, is them thinking that it's selfish.
Right.
Well, we're made to feel bad for taking care of ourselves.
Right.
Or to put ourselves first for 15 minutes of the day.
Right.
Yeah. And it even comes with, people with their boundaries or boundary breaking. And, I always say, people, in those circumstances, those that break your boundaries or those that you feel you have boundaries with, the reason is because they're the ones that are constantly breaking it. So they need it the most. Those people need those boundaries the most. And I think it's just taking that, having just a little bit more of that self kind of that fire. I often describe this as that kind of fire that's ignited. And I'm sure you guys have kind of felt that for yourselves of like, what's my why? Why do I want to change? Why is that important for me? And I want to do this for myself because I am sick and tired of this shit. I'm tired of the same old thing day in, day out. I want to change, and using that fire to spark all of these different things to make that daily commitment to yourself. Yeah, it's powerful. It's difficult to do it. It's difficult to even describe it to people. But those that have sparked that for themselves know exactly what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Amazing.
Awesome. So Jess, we that was almost an hour already. Oh my gosh.
That's crazy.
That is mad. I could literally talk about this
God
all the time.
Right?
So
it's fascinating.
It truly is. It truly is. The mind is a really complex thing. And I'm currently reading The Mountain Is You right now. And a lot of what you kind of talked about. And chapter 2 was really powerful for me in chapter 2, The Mountain Is You, because you're tackling your self-sabotage. Like which way do you self-sabotage? And I identified a couple of my own on there that I'm going to start working through. Using some of the methods that the author suggests in there. So have you ever read that book, Jess? I think, was it you that referred that? Somebody on our team referred that to me. I think maybe it was Kristen.
Yeah, I think Kristen. I've not heard of it, but it sounds really, really interesting.
The Mountain Is You.
You probably can't see it because my screen is freaking blurry, but The Mountain Is You by Brianna Wiest.
I've heard of it.
Self-sabotage into self-mastery. Really powerful.
Yeah, it's super powerful. One of the books that changed, I know we all kind of maybe have like a book that changed our life in some way, shape, or form. But the one for me was Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffers. As I mentioned at the start, having PTSD, I was fearful of just about everything. And I know for a lot of people, they fear food as well. And, thinking that they have, some sort of an addiction to food. And it's all based around this fear, scarcity mindset. And so I would highly, highly recommend that book for anyone struggling with that, because once you just feel that fear inside you and just give yourself permission to, okay, I'm really scared to have cookies in the house, but you know what? I know that it's something that's going to serve me in the future. I'm going to do it. And the more times you do that, the more times the cookies are allowed in the house, then that forbidden fruit feeling disintegrates. And that's how you find balance, really, is kind of washing that gap with the forbidden fruit analogy.
Beth, you actually do a challenge like that, don't you? Like once a year with people?
I do a candy challenge in October. Yeah. And I'm actually doing, so I, obviously Halloween, like people like, the binge on the Halloween candy. I'm like, okay, buy Halloween candy at the beginning of October and have your favorite piece of Halloween candy every single day. So by the time you get to Halloween, you're like, I don't even care anymore. I'm actually doing this with one of my group coaching clients. She struggles with binge eating sweets. And I'm like, okay, because she has, the good or bad and the restrict binge. And I'm like, what's your favorite treat? She's like, peanut butter cups. I'm like, okay, I want you to have a peanut butter cup every single day.
Yeah.
So she has to post in the group a picture of her in the peanut butter cup, and she already started day one yesterday. So I can't wait to see. I'm like, trust me, like maybe by the week 3, you're not even gonna, you're gonna be like, okay, peanut butter cup, okay, whatever. You know,
another peanut butter cup. Do I don't even want it now? Yeah.
I know that's how I felt with the candy challenge. By week 2, I'm like, I don't even want this anymore. I don't want this mini Twix. I don't even care.
I know. I had that with I use that same technique with clients too. I had it with Nutella for years, where a jar of Nutella would literally last a few days, and I'm not talking about spreading it, like it was spoon to mouth. I was not messing around. I was there to work. But now, you know, by giving myself permission to have that around those foods around, you know, I still have Nutella in the cupboard, and I've had it there for the last 3, maybe 4 weeks, and I've not had it because I just haven't wanted it, right? Because I know that I can have it if I want it.
Yes.
So yeah, it's such a powerful thing to reframe that. And that's where, you know, even that addiction, quote unquote addiction mindset, it differs significantly when even using that example. But I think trust, for a lot of people, trusting that you can overcome it, trusting that even if you do go, you know, head first into the candies and you eat, you know, loads and loads and loads of them, that's okay, because it's not going to mess everything. There's method in the madness.
Right. You can have your favorite trigger food in the house. Like it is possible, right? It is totally possible.
Yeah. Stop giving it so much power.
That's the thing. Stop putting food on a fucking pedestal. It is not like,
over
you know, it doesn't. You're giving it power.
Yeah, exactly. For sure.
As we're speaking with Jess Power, take back your power.
Oh yeah.
I love it. One of my programs is called the Power Method, which is like a nice little play on words, but it's all about taking back the power, and more so people realizing that they have the power within them already. Presently, they don't need to go searching for it. They don't need a magic pill or a solution. They have it. So all of the things that we all, you know, help with people is really regaining that power that they have over their life. So yeah, it's super powerful.
Yeah.
So Jess, for anybody listening, if they want to check you out, if they want to chat with you, follow you, see what you're all about on your social media, how can people do that?
Yeah, so you can get me on not on TikTok, on Instagram at the Behavioral Nutritionist. I am also on TikTok though, at behavioral_nutritionist. I know Matt is like pushing me to do more TikToks.
Yes, we need you.
I know. I've got so many ideas. I just don't know where to begin, but I know I just need to like pick one and go for it. But yeah, Instagram and TikTok, you can find me over there. My DMs are always open as well on Instagram. So any and all of the above. I do a lot more of the tools on my Instagram page, so I have a lot like of practical kind of things on there too. So yeah,
love it.
Yay! Thank you for being here.
Of course, it's been an absolute pleasure, guys. I could literally talk to you guys for hours more.
I know, right?
Definitely. Likewise.
Really, really fun.
For sure.
Awesome. Thanks again, Jess. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
You too, guys. Speak soon.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, Beth.
Matt.
Do a little recap here. That was fantastic. Jess, I mean, obviously I'm biased, but I love Jess. She's amazing. Obviously, she's on my team. But what did you think?
Oh, absolutely awesome. I love hearing all like different people's how they help people cope with different things, like stress eating and emotional eating. And I love like hopefully getting like more people like Jess on the podcast all the time. We could start like getting in people's heads about like sugar addiction, food addiction, our relationship with food, and really that we have the fucking power to change. You have to believe that you can. So many people do not believe in their ability to change. It's like our thoughts ultimately dictate our fucking actions.
I'm just going to go ahead and put this out there. We should
do it.
Let's get one of these authors of the books that we love. Let's get one of them on here to talk about this shit because
I love it.
I think we can make it happen. So I'm just speaking it into existence. It's going to happen. So
I love speaking shit into existence.
Yeah. There's lots of things that you've been working on with that might happen. So yeah, awesome stuff. Now there's something I wanted to tell you. Something I experienced over the weekend, actually.
Okay.
So you'll love this. So
I'm like, whoa, what happened?
I was recognized out in public.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Yeah. So, so I was, I flew into Florida, last Friday, and the flight attendant recognized me actually.
Really?
Yeah. I walked in and she's like, she did a double take. She's like, do you watch TikToks? I'm like,
do I watch TikToks?
I'm like, I am on TikTok. It threw me off guard. I didn't know how to respond. I'm like, I am on TikTok. She's like, I knew it. She's like, Matt and Beth. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, that's us. I'm like, I was actually supposed to see Beth this week, but it got canceled because she had COVID. And she's like, oh my God, no way. So her name is Alex. And
hi, Alex.
Hi, Alex. I told her I was going to give her a shout out on the podcast.
Yes. What's up, Alex?
What is up, Alex? She's a flight attendant for Spirit Airlines. She's amazing. And she kind of shared with me just how we've been able to help her. She listens to the podcast. She watches our stuff on TikTok. She's lost like 17 pounds, she said.
Fucking amazing.
Since she started listening to us, and she's done it in the ways that we talk about. She said the two biggest things, Beth, the two biggest things that she's worked on implementing, and she's a flight attendant, right? So she doesn't have, she's on the road constantly in the air. She's not able to do much.
Right.
She's drinking more water and she's walking more. She told me doing those two things alone, she's dropped 17 pounds and she feels so much better about herself, and she's happy, and she's improved her relationship with food. First and foremost was the important.
Love it.
I was fucking tearing up a little bit when I was talking
to her. I love hearing stuff like this.
We talked for like 10 minutes because our flight was delayed fucking 6 hours.
Oh, fucking Christ.
So she pulled me aside when I was leaving, when we actually got boarded, and then we had to deplane because we were delayed on the tarmac. So we talked for a little bit, and like I could just feel the happiness resonating through her voice and her energy. Like it moved me so much, and it was such an amazing moment. And that's the first time that's ever happened like that. Like holy shit! Like
I'm sure it's not gonna be the last.
Right. I mean, yeah. I mean, I hope not. I mean, if you ever see us in public, like I would love to hear from you.
Yeah.
Like, say hi or whatever. But it was fucking so cool. And like,
that's cool.
The impact we're having on people's lives. You don't even realize it sometimes.
We don't really. I forget, because sometimes we can focus on the negative.
Yes.
Which is human fucking nature, right? Yeah, but we don't really realize the impact that we are making.
Yeah. So Alex, thank you again for pulling
thank
me
you, Alex.
Hi. It was so cool.
Love it.
So how's everything else going with you?
You know what? Things are looking up. The family's all better. I'm actually starting a fat loss phase. I decided I'm documenting it on Instagram. Yeah, I tried these pair of pants on the other day, and they didn't even barely go over my calves. And I'm like, all right, Beth, it's time. I mean, it's been 2 years, really. I did a little mini one in January.
Right.
But now I'm just going to do like an 8 to 10 week one. I want to see the muscle that I've built. I don't really, it's not like a weight thing. We all know, like, I'm not really focusing on the scale. I want to lose some body fat. So if the scale doesn't move, I'm okay with that. Get some
How are you going to go about this fat loss phase then? What's your plan?
I am counting calories. I'm starting high, like around 1850, because I really don't know what my deficit is right now. Because I really haven't been tracking consistently at all. I've just been eating really. So I'm starting there, and then just going from there, focusing on 120 grams of protein and not changing anything but counting calories. So just by already doing that, I've lost like 1.25 pounds already.
Okay. And what, in the last week or two?
Because I started last week, really technically. Coming out of COVID.
Which seems like you still have a little bit of a cough from that, huh?
Yeah, and still it does suck. It's like up in my chest.
Yeah.
So that thing is what's cool about this is that I'm eating a lot of calories in a deficit because I haven't been dieting for a while. And that's what I think people need to realize, is that if you're consistently dieting, your calories are going to be low. Like, you have to rebuild your metabolism. You have to eat more food. So therefore,
definitely
you're in a safer spot.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see your journey with that. It's exciting. I mean, it's always nice when we can show people what we're doing. And so I'm doing it in a way too. Right. And also, like, I want to prove to people that
I'm going to be 50 years old. And I think that's another reason why I'm doing this is because I'm going to be 50 in like probably like 6 months or so. And I want to be in a good spot when I'm 50. And I want to show people that it's possible to be your best self. Like, and I'm not a big person. I'm not like, so people are like, I showed my before photos and they're like, you look great already. Okay, great. That's fine. Thank you very much. But I'm not doing it for you. I still love myself. I'm not saying that I feel like I'm like a piece of shit the way I am. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I love myself, but I like as a fitness professional, someone that's into building muscle and losing body fat, I know the potential that my body can look. And that's what I'm going for. It's just about becoming our best self, like challenging myself. I don't have a shitty relationship with food. I'm not cutting anything out. I just want to see where I can take myself. And I think
that's okay to do that. Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. So
push yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
I need a new challenge like that. Some type of a challenge. Obviously I've been talking about my own struggle with getting back into strength training and how I'm just not really enjoying it right now. But I'll figure something out for myself. I honestly think hiking, like getting into some intense, like legit hiking mountains and shit. I think that's going to be next for me. Like I want to do my first 14er, which if you don't know, or anybody that's listening doesn't know, it's a mountain peak that's over 14,000 feet. There's like over 90 of them in the United States. So I think that's going to be my next physical challenge, I think, is to get that first one under my belt. And obviously we're doing Katahdin.
Katahdin's a big first step to be before that, to be honest. Like, I'm excited for that. So I got like, I'm already looking into like Airbnbs, which holy shit, that one I sent you today was pretty decent. Look at the freaking deer antlers on the wall.
I didn't look at the pictures that you sent or the link that you sent, but you sent the price. I was like, oh, that's not bad at all. So
right, well, $176 a night that would be split 6 ways. So six divided by 179. That's fucking dog ass cheap. So
it is.
I'm excited for that. I'm excited for you and Ryan and to do it because it's no small feat.
Ryan.
It's no small feat. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be a good time. And obviously the other people we have coming as well. So
yeah, Hunter and my friend Mandy and Iris, that'll be fun.
Absolutely. I love it. The Cut the Crap retreat on Mount Katahdin.
Right. Yeah.
So
how's the running going? How's your ankle, by the way?
I'm going to do my first run since I sprained my ankle today, actually.
Okay, good.
I'm actually doing a squat session and running today. My ankle feels fine now.
Awesome.
So I'm very confident in it. I tested it last week with a little hike. I did I think a 4-mile hike last week on Thursday, and I felt fine during it and the next day even too. So that was like a little test for me, and I feel like I'm going to be fine. So.
Okay, good. I finished the week 3, day 3, so I'm going to move on to week 4, day 4.
And that's exciting because now we're starting to get into the longer runs.
Yeah, which is I'm like 5-minute run straight. I'm like,
yep. Heck yeah. So we the end of the month is here, so that means June 1st is coming, which means new programs for the Cut the Crap Patreon. We are excited for this next month. We were talking yesterday, right? And we decided that one of the challenges we're going to do next month for our patrons is a step challenge. Yeah. I
love step challenges.
I know it's going to be a great way.
I think they're super fun. And hopefully we'll get everyone involved in the Patreon with our, hopefully they'll check in with us and things like that.
Yeah, I think we'll do like a weekly check-in post for it. To get everybody's step counts and get a little competition. Everybody loves a little bit friendly competition.
Yeah, so. Maybe we should think of like a prize or something.
I was thinking that too. All right, well, we're going to give a prize then.
We'll put our little heads together and figure that one out.
So if you want to get in on that, go ahead and join the Patreon guys. $5 a month will get you set up with that. So, and then of course, today's Wednesday, which means new recipes are released into Now We're Cooking. I didn't see what they are yet, but I'm going to check that here in a little bit. So new recipes were just released as well if you have the $10 a month subscription on Patreon.
Yeah. So, and they are now integrated with MyFitnessPal, which is
that's right.
So they have actually like put every single one in there. So that's cool because the hardest part is putting a recipe in, which everyone's like, how do I like that? Like put a freaking casserole in there. Well, now
don't worry about it. We got it for you, right?
Yeah. Divided into servings already.
I love it. Good stuff. All right. Well,
awesome
episode.
Yeah.
All right, then. We'll see you later. Everybody have a good one.
See you on the flip.
And that is a wrap for this episode of Cut the Crap with Beth and Matt. Did we help you cut through the bullshit? We want to know. Send us a DM on Instagram and share your thoughts. We'd love to hear them. And if you did find this one helpful, why not share this episode with a friend? I know I personally love it when a friend shares their favorite podcast with me, along with a text saying, "Oh my God, you have got to check out this podcast. You'll love it." And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss future episodes.